The Dallas Stars weren't supposed to be a first round body, and that's where this autopsy has to start. This wasn't some cute wild card team that ran out of magic, or a young team getting its first taste of the postseason and learning the hard lessons. This wasn't a happy to be here outfit that accidentally wandered into a bad matchup. This was Dallas. This was Jason Richardson, Wyatt Johnston, Mikko Rantanen, Matt Duchene, Jamie Benn, Miro Heiskanen, Thomas Hartley, and Jake Ettinger. This is a roster with layers: stars, vets, prime age weapons, blue line talent, playoff experience, and the kind of goalie profile that makes you believe a team can survive ugly nights. That's why this death isn't funny. Good teams lose playoff series. That happens every year. But the Stars were built to avoid this kind of ending. They're built to be deeper than panic, calmer than chaos, and to have one more answer when a series starts getting uncomfortable. Instead, Minnesota kept making the series uncomfortable, and Dallas never really took full control of it again. So this is the Dallas Stars postmortem. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Not one wound, not a bad bounce or one whistle. Wasn't just an unlucky night. It was repeated impact. Minnesota kept hitting the same pressure points in this series until Dallas stopped looking like the team that it was supposed to be, the team that they proved to be. That's the important part. The Stars didn't come into this looking like a fragile team. They came in looking like a layered team with enough scoring to survive a cold line, and enough veteran presence to survive a bad period, enough defense to survive a push, and enough goaltending to survive the kind of chaos that defines April. But playoff trauma is not just one giant hit. Sometimes it's a series of collisions. One failed exit, a lost puck battle, a bad special teams sequence, one missed chance when the game is still alive, one goal that turns that bench quiet, or one night where the other team looks faster to the loose puck, stronger on the wall, and clearer about what the game's supposed to look like. Eventually, the structure gives, and that's what happened to Dallas. The Stars didn't lose a game. They lost the argument about what kind of team this series belonged to. The case file is pretty simple. Dallas has the names. Minnesota had the pressure. And when a playoff series gets tight, sometimes names aren't enough. Resumes are not enough. Depth charts, also not enough. The series starts asking very direct questions. Can you get through the neutral zone cleanly and win puck back when you dump in? Can you defend the slot without turning every shift into a fire drill? And can your goalie give you the one extra save? For too much of this series, Dallas had partial answers. Jason Robertson's good enough to be one of the central figures in a winning playoff run. Wyatt Johnston, he's good enough to make you believe the next version of this franchise might be even better than the current one. Mikko Rantanen's the kind of high-end weapon that a contender adds because it's tired of being almost there. Matt Duchene gives you skill and experience. Jamie Benn gives you edge and memory. And Miro Heiskanen is supposed to be the blue line stabilizer. Thomas Hartley is supposed to be part of the next layer, and Jake Ettinger is supposed to be the answer when the spreadsheet catches fire. But the Wild didn't care what Dallas was supposed to be. They made the Stars play through contact, frustration, traffic, and a series that got heavier instead of cleaner. By the end, Dallas looked less like a machine with multiple answers and more like a team searching for the first answer. Now, before we get too deep into the wreckage, this season deserves respect. The Dallas Stars weren't fraudulent. They were not an empty season. They were not an empty regular season game. They're a real team with real reasons to believe. Robertson still gives this team elite offensive gravity. Even when he's not scoring, he changes coverage. He pulls attention. He gives the Stars a top-line identity. Wyatt Johnston's not just a nice young player anymore either. He's a core piece. He's one of the reasons Dallas fans shouldn't look at this ending and see the whole building burning. Rantanen gives him another terrifying piece, a player with championship weight, size, skill, and the ability to change the entire feel of a forward group. Duchene still matters because playoff teams need players who can create something out of a broken shift, and Ben still matters because not every postseason moment is clean. And Ben's lived through the ugly parts of the sport long enough to know what they feel like. Haskinen and Harley give Dallas the kind of blue line talent that travels, and Ettinger gives them the kind of goalie who makes deep run logic possible. So no, this wasn't a bad team exposed to an imaginary team. This is worse. This was a good team that's got enough pieces to expect more. Then they ran face first into an ending that made all those pieces feel disconnected. That's a different kind of pain. The first symptom was control. There are series where the better team loses a game but still feels like a better team. Then there are series where the favorite gets pushed, but the underlying reality never changes. You watch it and think, fine, the opponent got one, maybe two, but eventually the deeper team's going to impose itself. And this didn't feel like that. Minnesota kept dragging Dallas into the kind of game Minnesota wanted to play. The Wild made the series uncomfortable for Dallas, and the Stars kept looking annoyed that their comfort wasn't coming back. That's a bad symptom. The second symptom was offensive interruption. The Stars had weapons, but weapons only matter if they can get deployed. Minnesota did enough to make Dallas work too hard for clean looks, too hard for entries, too hard for second chances, and too hard for the kind of momentum shifts that make a bench start to breathe again. When a team with this much talent starts looking like it needs the perfect sequence to score, something's gone wrong. The third symptom was the physical and emotional tax. Minnesota didn't need to be prettier than Dallas. It needed to be harder to play against them than Dallas wanted it to be. That's playoff hockey. You don't always beat a contender by being more talented. Sometimes you beat the other guy by forcing every shift to cost. By the later stages of this series, the Stars looked less like a team they looked more like a team paying interest on every earlier mistake. The fourth symptom is that the safety nets failed. Depth is supposed to be a safety net. Experience, goaltending, and the blue line are supposed to be safety nets. Dallas had a lot of safety nets on paper, but in the game that mattered, the fall reached all the way to the floor or the ice. So let's get precise. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Minnesota didn't kill Dallas with one elegant incision. It wasn't surgical or clean. This was repeated impact until the body stopped answering. The Stars took hits in the areas contenders are supposed to protect. They took hits to their structure, their poise, their ability to turn talent into pressure, and to their belief that eventually the series would remember who's supposed to win it. And that belief never saved them. Blunt force trauma is ugly because it doesn't give you one tidy explanation. It leaves bruises everywhere. This autopsy doesn't show one clean wound. It shows impact across the whole frame. And the false hope was depth. That sounds harsh because depth is real. Dallas really does have it. This isn't fake depth. It's not just third line names that fans talk themselves into. The Stars have legitimate layers. But the false hope is believing that layers automatically become answers. They don't. Depth matters only if it changes the series, when the top of the lineup gets stuck. It matters if it creates calm when the game gets frantic. Goaltending matters if it steals the stretch where the team in front of it stops protecting and the goalie's wobbling. Dallas had the ingredients for survival. Minnesota made them prove they could survive under pressure, and the proof never fully arrived. Now, this isn't the demolition order. The Stars they haven't cratered. They're not a hopeless team that needs to start calling every general manager in the league tomorrow and offering everything that's not nailed down. A lot survives. Jason Robertson survives because elite offensive players don't stop being elite because the final image is ugly. Wyatt Johnson survives, and maybe more than just survives. He's one of the strongest arguments that this team's window is still wide open. Mikko Rantanen survives because players like that are exactly what keep you believing, even after the first attempt goes bad. Miro Heiskanen survives because high-end defensemen who can drive play are still among the hardest things that hockey can find. Thomas Harley survives because the next version of Dallas still needs his growth, and Jake Ettinger survives, although not without questions. That's the burden of being the goalie on a contender. You can be part of the reason the window exists and still wear some of the damage when the window slams shut. Jamie Benn survives, but differently. He's not the future anymore. He's memory, edge, history. He's identity. But every year the balance changes, and every year the question gets louder. How much of the old stars are still part of the solution? And how much are they now part of the weight? Matt Duchene survives as a useful piece, but useful pieces on expensive teams eventually become accounting questions. The core survives, but the certainty doesn't. And that's the real damage. The uncomfortable question for Dallas is not whether they're good, because, yeah, they're good. The question is whether good enough has started to become a trap. Because when you have this much talent and this much playoff experience, this much structure, you're not judged by whether the roster looks respectable in November. You're judged by what happens when the rink starts to shrink. And in this series, the rink shrank on Dallas. Minnesota made it smaller, meaner, more crowded, more annoying, and yeah, more expensive. This is where the Stars were supposed to have another gear. Instead, they looked like a team with several pretty good gears, but they couldn't find the right one at the right time. So the question becomes, is Dallas one adjustment away, or are they stuck in that contender zone where every year looks like it could be the year, until suddenly every year becomes evidence that it probably isn't? That's not a fun question, but the body's on the table, so we have to ask. Official ruling, the 2025-26 Dallas Stars died of blunt force trauma caused by repeated playoff impact from a Minnesota team that made the series heavier, uglier, and less comfortable than Dallas could handle. Contributing factors: failure to fully impose offensive control, failure of the safety nets, a series-long inability to make the roster's depth feel as decisive as it looked on paper. Time of death, when Dallas stopped looking like it was waiting to take over and started looking like it was waiting to be rescued. So the third period. By the final stretch, the season wasn't fighting anymore. It was just absorbing damage. The Stars were built for more than this. And that's the eulogy and the indictment. They're too talented for a first-round body bag, too layered to go this quietly, and too experienced to look this uncomfortable for this long. Robertson deserved a longer stage. Johnston deserved a longer runway. Heiskanen deserved a series where his team looked steadier around him. Ettinger deserved the chance to be remembered for a rescue instead of another question. And Dallas fans deserved an ending that felt proportional to the roster they watched all year long. But playoff hockey's not obligated to give you the ending that matches your resume. It gives you the ending you can survive. Minnesota made the series hurt, and Dallas kept taking the hits. Eventually, the season stopped getting back up. The Stars weren't a bad team. They're a good team with a bad death. And those are often the autopsies that hurt the most. Thanks for watching.